Exile PoE Academy here with 3 off-meta league starters that you can have fun with if you are comfortable with PoE and, think of yourself as a more experienced player. Alright, so let's start with the first one, which is a Void Sphere Poison Occultist. The build abuses Void Sphere of Rending, which received a very nice buff in the recent patch notes. It also abuses Spell Poisoning and Breath of the Council. Breath of the Council is particularly powerful in this case because it increases the duration of the skill, increasing its area and chaos damage. And paired with Spellblade, we can also abuse the very high physical damage on the weapon for a lot of added damage to the skill. You can use Bane to curse enemies, and I also recommend that you are using one curse on hit setup on your rings to proliferate explosions from Profane Bloom. The build can be a bit more tanky if you prefer to, so it's up to you to change it around, but I think it's very good for what it is. And Purity of Elements especially solves a lot of gear pressure early on and makes you elemental immune. The build is all in all very well rounded, and I think I might even start with this one. The second build I wanted to show to you is a Cold BV Inquisitor crafted by myself. It abuses the Pragmatism Colosseum plate, which increases the gem level of Blade Vortex by 12, but reduces its level by 2 for each socketed gem. So, you don't want to be using a 6-link, which is ideal in a League Star scenario, but rather use a 4-link, which after some testing seems to be the sweet spot. You can also increase its gem levels further by using other sources, for example from your main weapon or your amulet, and then all of a sudden you have a level 29 Blade Vortex. If you're now using Rimsorrow's gloves to convert all your physical damage to cold damage and add a hatred on top of it, you are looking at serious cold damage that can really chill and freeze a lot of enemies. I'm a bit concerned about the clear speed of the build. Currently it's only using Herald of Ash for explosions and Herald of Purity for more damage, but you maybe have to swap Herald of Purity for Herald of Ice to make the clear feel even better. I think it has reasonable tankiness and also recovery, but it needs a Rotgut Flask, this one here, to speed through maps, because you can see we are generating frenzy charges by abusing this node over here. If you mark an enemy, which we do by using Assassin's Mark on hit, we can apply this on hit if we are using Whirling Blades. And this gives us movement speed, but also Onslaught. If you take the box on Onslaught, you can see that we are already at 83% movement speed, which I think solves the issue of the build being very slow without the flask. The build relies on certain unique items, especially the Wrathpith Globe shield. It was 70C last league, so it's quite obtainable, but you can see it also drastically improves the damage, almost doubles it. And I'm not quite sure if I will be using this build or the Void Sphere build, so let me know in the comments which one do you think will perform better in a League Start scenario. Last but not least, there's also a very good build from the past, which is Lightning Conduit. The problem with Lightning Conduit is that it's very clunky to play because you have to apply Shock with a different skill and then use Lightning Conduit on these enemies. Most builds, I think, use Orb of Storm or other lightning skills to apply Shock, but this one has a nice trick to it because it automates the shocks. So how can you do this? Well, you have to use the Stormseeker gloves. They make you unaffected by shock while you're leeching energy shield. Since we're a trickster, we're leeching energy shield all the time, which is nice. And then you can shock the enemies with a certain skill. I'm using Shock Nova because the ring always shocks. You can reflect this shock to yourself by using the Maligaro's Restraint. If you're reading this, shocks you cause are reflected back to you. And now we only have to solve the issue that these shocks are proliferated to enemies. And how we can do this is by using elemental proliferation on our Shock Nova. With this setup, you are shocking all enemies by the same amount you are shocked in an area around you. If you look at all the sources of maximum shock effect, you can reach up to 95% effect of shock, which is insane and crazily scales the damage of Lightning Conduit. For bosses, you might need to use a Riffing Jar. It's this one. Because you're not applying as strong shocks on the bosses as you would on normal trash mobs. But if you're shocking these with your Shock Nova, you are back again at 95%. I think the build is a bit prone to chaos damage. You can see that there are quite some rare items still. So you have to make sure that you squeeze in some chaos resistances. But other than that, I think this is a very nice starter, putting out a lot of damage and, solving the issue with Lightning Conduit in a very creative way. Like I said, this video was not meant to be a video with build guides for these particular builds, but if you're comfortable with PoE and you have some knowledge of the game, I think these are very good alternatives to the more popular and also more expensive League starters, and using very cool skills and interactions that you can abuse early on to make some easy money. So yeah, let me know in the comments which one do you like, if you like these. If not, tell me why. And yeah, happy League start, Exile, and see you in the next one.